sometimes we tell stories that other people can't or don't have the guts to say or don't have the courage to say, but they still feel those things.
Kora Nixon, known by her moniker MIZNXN, earned the title of Michigan's entertainment juggernaut for her captivating performances throughout the Great Lakes Bay region, where she got her start as a singer-songwriter. Her soothing alto voice, poetic lyrics, and love of good old-fashioned fun all contribute to the allure created around her shows. MIZNXN will be at the Saginaw Art Museum on July 11th as part of the Museum Tunes concert series. For more information about the concert, visit saginawartmuseum.org. So Kora, thank you so much for joining us here on the Temple Arts podcast. We are looking forward to your show at the Saginaw Art Museum out in our gardens for the Museum Tunes concert series in July. Grateful that you're able to give us a little bit of your time today to talk about your story and your songwriting. So I'd like to jump right in. You have sort of this very soulful kind of voice. I'd love you to describe a little bit of your background in terms of how you discovered that voice and the way that maybe it's changed and evolved throughout your singing career.
Mom would say that it first started when I was a colicky baby and I cried a lot. And then the doctor said, "Oh, that girl's going to be a good singer." But growing up, I participated in youth choirs and things in the area. And so I think from there, that's where I learned the foundation of the singing, right? The kind of bluesier, the more sultry stuff, I think, factored into when I started listening to more blues like Elvis Presley and Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin and really learning that's soul side of things. So
yeah, it's something that's sort of a discovery process then, from your youth. When would you say that, or is there a time when you really felt like, hey, I know how I want to use my voice. I'm gonna start writing songs, or was it sort of a gradual process in terms of discovering that you wanted to write your own music?
yeah, so I actually was away from music for many years. Once I was in high school and college, right, work and school took a precedence, and like many people over the pandemic, we had time to think about what was important to me, and I knew I would have regrets if I didn't do something with the music. And I went through a breakup, so that always really inspires songwriting. But that was, again, a combination of that breakup, a combination of living alone during the pandemic, a combination of, again, wanting to do something with my music, I think is what inspired me to just take a stab at it, right? And I guess not many people write an entire album to start. Usually they start with one song, but I I just had all these feelings, and I think that the album that I wrote kind of portrayed that sadness, or at least I hope it kind of did, because I kind of like all my albums moving forward. I think are going to all kind of fit one theme, right? Like happy, upbeat, or jazzy, sexy, sultry, or again sad. So yeah, that's what kickstarted.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about the creation of this album. Was it the kind of thing where you would do it sort of sequentially, or all in pieces? Like write one song and write another song and write another song, or was it like write a piece of this song and then write a piece of this song and then, hey, look, I have half a dozen songs that are sort of halfway done. How do I finish
Yeah.
this? Tell me a little more about that process.
Yeah, so I did sort of write them sequentially. A lot of my songs start out as poems. So I would write a poem in its entirety and then sit down and try to figure out the music to it. So again, that kind of happened sequentially. But once I got into the studio, there were some songs that didn't quite have the music figured out, right? So I kind of was in parallel of while trying to record the ones I already knew through and through, still trying to, write the music for the other stuff. So that was, it was a good prompt to have, knowing that I had studio time that I was paying for. And I was like, I have to make sure the song is done by Tuesday. So yeah, that's kind of how I how I attack the songwriting aspect of it.
It's interesting that you described that studio experience, and I'd love to hear more about that. How some of the constraints of time, in a way, it might have influenced the ultimate outcome. Can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I worked with Andy Reid, a local producer here in Bay City, and I wanted to work with him because, again, I had no idea what I was doing. Right, I'd been out of music for so long, and so he was kind of my mentor throughout the process. And when I went to the studio, sometimes I wouldn't know exactly where I wanted the song to go, and so I'd play it for him, and he would throw some ideas onto it. There was one time when I went in with the song and I was like, "I don't know about this one. I don't know if it's gonna work." And we recorded it and it was not working. So I had to come back the next week to finish it out and spend some time sitting with it. But um, having him to bounce ideas off of and to uh, you know pick his brain a little bit really helped me throughout that process. But yeah,
Was there a particular part of the studio time that you enjoyed more, or a part that you enjoyed less?
that's a good question. I For one of the songs, Valeria's Lullaby, I brought in a family friend, Jack Faverka, to help play some bells and some drums on Valeria's Lullaby and some other songs. And having that collaborative approach with multiple people in the studio and kind of bouncing ideas off of each other, like, oh, we could do it this way, or oh, we could do it, another way. I really like that sort of collaboration. Again, being a singer-songwriter, I've been playing alone a lot, and I miss having that band experience, right? Again, a lot of my musical background was playing in concert bands or jazz bands or things like that. So uh, that's the part I like in the studio, dog in the studio to pet.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've been in Andy's studios, and it's a cozy place. It's sort of surprising to think how much music comes out of that basement of his, and the amount of equipment and instruments that he can fit in that space, but still an incredible production space. So.
Mm.
You mentioned a little bit about that collaborative process that was in the studio, and contrasting that with some of the, I don't want to say isolation, but the aloneness of being a songwriter and having a lot of this material start off with your own voice and music, the guitar and piano. Do you see yourself in the future having more collaborative efforts with other artists, sort of bringing other artists into your set, and where you're sort of the primary songwriter, but you have that backup and that support happening?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually my main goal for 2022 is to collaborate with people. Currently down here in Metro Detroit, where I'm living, I have started songwriting with a buddy I met, and we are looking for other people. So we're looking for a drummer, bass player, other songwriters, and things like that. Uh, and I do want to collaborate with the Saginaw High Marching Band and the Detroit Youth Choir and work on some songs with them because in the loneliness of writing 1220, the album I released over the pandemic by myself, I realized I needed to write that one by myself, right? That was my story that I wanted to tell and didn't want any ideas from other people to be like, "Oh, maybe this way," right? It was very important to me that it was just myself. But again, in that solitude, though, I realized how much I missed collaborating with people, and so that is part of the reason why I moved down here. The talent and the not only in the music industry, but also just the film industry and all sorts of different people down here in Metro Detroit. Uh, I'm still meeting people and going to all these events to find the right team, but yeah, that's definitely the main focus this year is getting people together because I realized other people have good ideas too, you know? Sometimes I'm like, "Ooh, I didn't even think of that." So it's a fun process to collaborate with other people.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. It's almost as though you are able to have a sounding board about you might pick up something and that they're doing, or they might pick up something that you're doing, but still sort of that underlying drive or emotion that you're able to bring to the table and want to maintain a particular uniqueness to that messaging. When you're writing your music.
Mhm.
The with this album and your most recent work, it is sort of a very personal kind of writing style and approach. Can you tell me a little bit more about sort of how you feel about sharing that personal nature or personal sort of those innards of your poetry journal or diary or whatever with the world, like a lot of times it feels like those emotions are for the inside, and they
Oh,
stay there with
abs
people, whereas in your case it's like there's a more of that showcased. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I was really, really scared to release this album because of exactly what you said, right? It was very vulnerable, and leading up to the release of it, I was like staying up late every night. I had anxiety, and I was like, I had the sweats, just thinking about it. But I think once it was released, the amount of support and love that I had coming in from it, I had crying moms reaching out. I had friends that I hadn't talked to in so long, like thanking me for again being vulnerable and telling my story, because kind of what I found out was that they're like, this is so many other women's stories, or I relate to this song so much. And that was something I didn't think about while I was writing, right? It was very internal, like, this is about me. I'm scared to release this because then people are going to know about my brain or know about what I think about, and that was scary. But I think through sharing those thoughts and my art in this way, it's actually for other people too, right? And as a songwriter, that is a lot of what I've found out that we do is sometimes we tell stories that other people can't or don't have the guts to say or don't have the courage to say, but they still feel those things. And so that was a really beautiful thing, but it's still a scary thing, right, to talk about. This that whole album and things like that are kind of in the past for me a little bit. I still love playing the songs, right, because I wrote them, but they do hold a type of sentimental value to me that sometimes is hard to play, and sometimes I actually, well, for some of the songs, I actually never memorized them entirely because I knew the only time I was going to play them in their entirety was in the recording studio. So,
Hmm. Well, that's beautiful. There's a particular pureness to what you're giving the world that starts on the internal side, and I feel like that's a sort of a theme that I hear throughout these interviews that I do, is how a lot of times the art can be very first off personal before it's ever for anybody else. Just in closing, I'd love to get your perspective on sort of where you see things going from here for your own music and creative pursuits. You mentioned a little bit more of that collaboration, but if there's other projects in the works that you're willing to share with the audience.
yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned, I am trying to collaborate with the Saginaw High Marching Band. I've been trying to email everybody involved because I have a kind of Saginaw anthem that I want to write. So if you know of somebody, if anybody knows of anybody that can get me in touch with the right people, uh, I'm working on that, and I'm working on some more songs for a more upbeat album. So again, working with some songwriters down here in Detroit for that. So I do plan to release more music this year. So all in the spirit of collaboration with local Michigan artists.
Cool. Well, we'll look forward to that new music, and we'll look forward to the music in the gardens at Museum Tunes in July 11th. And we'll be able to hear that soulful voice of yours and see your talent right here at the museum.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Thank you for listening to the Temple Arts Podcast. Please consider subscribing to the podcast and making a donation to the arts through SaginawArtMuseum.org or TempleTheater.com. This will allow us to continue to bring enriching program to Saginaw and beyond.